Also, just minutes ago, sirens sounding all over the occupied Palestine. We began this latest monitoring of the information less than an hour ago when Israel detected the beginning of an Iranian attack, and afterwards different strikes were made and impacts hit their targets in different areas of the occupied territories. We continue to follow the latest information on this new wave of retaliatory strikes from Iran. In Haifa, there is a fire reported after Iranian missiles impacted an oil refinery. We're looking at images from Tel Aviv from just moments ago as the Iranian missiles were coming down the city, a city that's in state of emergency at the moment. These are images from the most recent new wave of Iran's retaliatory strikes hitting Tel Aviv, the most recent one that is still underway. A new wave of attacks launched onto Tel Aviv, occupied Jerusalem, and different areas of the occupied Palestinian territories. We were reporting before on fires on the way in Haifa as well, after the strike of different Iranian missiles targeting their objectives. Some of the objectives targeted in Haifa, a power plant, also an oil refinery plant. As we look at images from the Tel Aviv skyline at the moment. Also, according to different news outlets and also to the statements made by the Hamas Brigade Al-Qassam, documents show the moment in which an Iranian missile fell in the central power plant of the Haifa city, as we were just mentioning. So the information comes from various sources, from civil to political organizations to correspondents on site, local news outlets, and we are monitoring everything live here in teleSUR English. What's been coming through for the past minutes has been different footages. We were just playing those on screen. Now we're looking at the Tel Aviv skyline live of footage capturing an Iranian missile bypassing the Israeli air defenses. Now we see the direct impacts made on some of these occupied territories where the Iranian missiles were able to strike, bypassing the Israeli defenses. Dozens of Iranian missiles impacted the occupied and occupation entity, according to different local news outlets. We're looking at this new wave of strikes coming from Iran. This is in the framework of Operation True Promise 3. That is the skyline of Tel Aviv at the moment, as a new night is coming to a close, the fourth one, after Iran has begun to retaliate the initial attacks carried out by Israel. Once again, we were saying that new waves of Iranian missiles were directly impacting different areas of the occupied territories. In particular, reports come from several impacts at Haifa's oil refinery, also Haifa's power plant. There are now recent reports of an ongoing fire in the city following the strikes. And that is the situation at the moment. We continue to follow it closely. Other reports with footage come from massive destruction in Tel Aviv following the Iranian missile strikes. The occupation forces have announced just minutes ago that at least 10 settlers have been injured, including serious injuries in the most recent Iranian bombing over the Zionist entity over the state of Israel. We were reporting also on the ongoing fire in Haifa following the missile attacks. These all in the framework of the most recent attacks of Operation True Promise 3, this retaliatory operation carried out by Iran after Israel decided to attack it very early on Friday morning and unleash this series of events, unleashing this new stage in the situation in the Middle East. These are images from Tel Aviv. As we were saying, one of the cities most targeted in this new wave of Iran's retaliatory strikes. We're looking at some of those missiles impacting the defense mechanisms and some of those bypassing that Israeli defense system and impacting their targets on the ground. Throughout these days, different facilities, power plants, nuclear facilities, strategic military sites have been hit and targeted by the Iranian missiles. This new wave of attacks from Iran is said to be among the largest ones since the Operation True Promise 3 began, with over 100 missiles sent from Iranian territory. We continue to follow this live. Israeli military has said that it was apparently safe to exit bomb shelters. This is very recent information right after the most recent set of strikes coming from Iran in an exchange of fire as Operation True Promise 3 continues. We continue to see different international statements. We were recalling the statements of Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs today, and once again he came out to say and accuse Israel of killing many children in its strikes in the country. The Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Bakay said that Israeli forces had also targeted Hakim Children's Hospital in Tehran following earlier Iranian media reports of a strike on the perimeter of the medical facility. In this way, Israel continues its way of striking health facilities, one of the Zionist ways of attacking that have become so common, sadly, in the Gazan territory, attacking medical facilities, in particular those dedicated to childcare. In this case, the spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry stated that they are killing children as a hobby. also referring to the Israeli opposition leader's controversial comments last month, in which he said a sane country does not kill children as a hobby. More on the current situation. Iran vowed to retaliate as also Israeli attacks continued. At the moment, we see reports from explosions over Tel Aviv and Iran in this new wave of attacks that come from Iran. In this case, we continue to look at the latest updates. We were reporting on a missile hitting Haifa just moments ago, and the massive destruction, the ongoing fire from these missiles that have hit in Haifa, an oil refinery plant and a power plant as well. More information, according to Israeli media, at least 25 settlers have been injured due to direct hits on buildings in Tel Aviv. We continue with information on the present destruction brought about in major cities of the occupied territories as Tel Aviv, as Haifa. We're also monitoring the situation in Jerusalem, where explosions were reported as well. At the same moment, we continue to monitor the situation in Gaza as the Israeli attacks in the occupied territories, particularly in the coastal enclave, have continued throughout these days, have been non-stop, and in particular today, Israel had killed 59 Palestinians in Gaza, many of them while they were trying to get humanitarian aid. We have seen and followed the international repercussions and also denunciations made on this new way of attacks perpetrated by Israel as they continue to subject Palestinians to inhumane conditions and also targeting aid distribution centers, killing many civilians as they approach to asking for food, asking for water. That situation, a situation that has been going on since October of 2023, has not stopped this weekend as well. All the while, missiles have been exchanged and fire has been exchanged from Tel Aviv and Tehran. In more news, Israeli news outlets are reporting a direct hit from a missile on a building in Petah Tikva in central Israel, central occupied territory. The outlet also said that the strike had caused a fire at the site. One more of different reports that talk about different missiles hitting their targets in the occupied territories after this new wave of retaliatory attacks coming down on major cities such as Tel Aviv. Also, more information on this recent attacks, particularly in the occupied Haifa. Israeli ambulance has stated that 4 direct injuries in Haifa have been reported, including 2 hits on the city's main power generators. We were reporting in Haifa a direct hit on an oil refinery, also a direct hit on Haifa's main power plant. Now we are seeing a report of 4 direct injuries in Haifa as the occupation's ambulance service reports 8 buildings that have sustained direct hits in the recent Iranian missile attacks. We are monitoring the situation live and bringing the latest updates through teleSUR English in this recent escalation and the arrival of the most recent wave of Iranian missiles, retaliatory strikes on Israel. Let's recall, according to Israeli media, at least 25 settlers were injured due to direct hits on buildings in Tel Aviv. Also, we're looking at images from the impact that different missiles had in Tel Aviv. As we were just saying, this new wave of retaliatory strikes, many signaled as one of the most important ones, over 100 missiles involved in this wave of strikes in the 4th day of responses of retaliation. Also, we've seen destruction in a building in Bnei Brak in Tel Aviv. Images that we are looking at in the central occupied Palestine due to the fall of Iranian missiles. We are going over the repercussions, the consequences of this new wave of retaliatory strikes. Let's recall, just to follow the timeline, early Friday morning, Israel decided to launch an operation on Iranian territory, targeting different facilities and also civilian population. After addressing their own people, the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, vowed to retaliate, vowed to respond. That statement was followed by other authorities, including the President Mahmoud Pezeshkian and also the Foreign Ministry. And afterwards, Iran sent and launched its Operation True Promise 3, of which we are now seeing its 8th wave of retaliatory strikes hitting occupied territory of the state of Israel. As we have been seeing for the past days, direct hits of missiles overcoming Israeli defenses. Many of these images, the first of its kind, showing the capabilities of the Iranian power over the missile defenses that many deemed the best in the world. However, we've seen the impact, we've seen the consequences, and what we're seeing on screen is the new wave of direct attacks and also the impact that it caused in different cities. We continue to see more footage of the destruction of Tel Aviv following the Iranian missile strikes. The most recent set of strikes in the past hours, different rounds of strikes have been going on, underway in the past days. The most recent ones hitting Tel Aviv and Haifa. We've seen different statements as Israel's news outlets citing Israeli emergency services have said that medics in the central area had transferred 12 people with injuries to the hospital. The injuries were mild to moderate. That was the Israeli report. And medics are continuing to operate in the Tel Aviv area, they stated. We are following local news outlets, also correspondents on site, geopolitical experts, monitoring all the information available from the site to understand the ongoing situation at the moment between Iran and the Israeli regime. More on this, according to Israeli media, unprecedented fires erupt at multiple sites in Tel Aviv following the Iranian missile attack. We were seeing images and footage of the current state of Tel Aviv after the missiles impacts, after different strikes hit their targets in Tel Aviv. We were talking about injuries that were reported, damages to buildings, and as we were also seeing on screen, different fires that are in eruption underway at the moment in the city of Tel Aviv following the recent strikes. We continue to follow all the information. A synagogue in Bnei Brak, Tel Aviv, center of the state of Israel, center of the occupied Palestinian territories, was also destroyed by the Iranian missiles. This is one of the latest reports coming from the site. We have footage of great destruction in Tel Aviv from the missiles that are hitting the ground. Beit Tikva also being brought down over one of the buildings. We were mentioning before also in Haifa, power plant that was struck directly by the Iranian missiles, as well as the power plant. There were also reports of a missile hitting an oil refinery as we continue to see the Tel Aviv city skyline at dawn. As a new day approaches, a new day that is set to probably bring about more retaliatory attacks, as Iran is willing to show that it is abiding by its own word, that it was going to retaliate, it was going to respond if any sort of relevant attack was carried out against its sovereign state. That is what Israel did on Friday morning, and what we're looking at are the consequences. Consequences that are having major impacts across the world, both in terms of the positioning of world powers, in terms of the conflict, many calling for restraint, many answering the different cries by the people to stop the Zionist aggressions. Israel that made a call to Western powers to back their own efforts. They formally asked the United States to join their efforts against Iran. officially the United States declined this asking, even though experts state that it's practically impossible to separate the intentions of both material allies, a longtime ally of all military endeavors in the Middle East. Regardless, U.S. President Donald Trump has had to trace a fine line between praising the attacks and the operation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that carry out yet another set of aggression against civilians after months and months of indiscriminately targeting civilians in Gaza. But also, U.S. President Donald Trump had to refrain from directly enforcing the attack. He referred to a conversation he had with Russian President Vladimir Putin, also stating that a deal had to be achieved, also suggesting that Vladimir Putin himself could be a good mediator in this framework in which Donald Trump is trying to be the one that achieves or that wins politically a ceasefire in the Ukrainian conflict. One of the most relevant points of the Donald Trump campaign had to do with the ending of international conflicts at a large scale, particularly the conflicts in which the United States was directly economically involved. So at this moment, such an escalation of violence from its biggest ally that is also asking the United States to join in is really tearing apart those two perspectives between backing Israel and maintaining its campaign promises to his political base. We continue to follow the latest updates. We continue to look at the aftermath, the impact caused by the different missiles that hit Tel Aviv just minutes ago after the new round of retaliatory strikes from Iran. We see destructed buildings, we see ongoing fires that are still being reported. A building came down, reportedly, according to some news outlets, the people inside in Bnei Brak. This is being reported by different news outlets from the site. We were also reporting on a synagogue in Bnei Brak in Tel Aviv as well that had been destroyed by Iranian missiles, as we continue to look at footage from the aftermath of this recent wave of strikes. We continue to follow the latest on the Iranian attacks on the state of Israel. Some news outlets are reporting that Israel is shutting down part of its largest refinery after Iran attack. We had commented on one of the missiles hitting a power plant, an oil refinery as well, and now some news outlets are reporting on Israel shutting down parts of its largest oil refinery. We'll also need to monitor the effects and the impacts that this has. not only on Israel's economy, but also in its civilian population. We continue to monitor the situation as the images of the aftermath of the missile strikes on occupied territories keep coming in, showing destruction of infrastructure, showing ongoing fires at the moment, while the civilian population continues to be on alert. The city is in state of emergency. We had said that according to Israeli media, at least 25 settlers were injured due to direct hits by Iran's missiles on Tel Aviv buildings. This was reported minutes ago, as of course information continues to come in. This is a minute-to-minute monitoring as the situation unfolds. As explosions were reported in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem following the latest raid of Iranian strikes, Iranian missiles. More on the international arena. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said a negotiated solution is needed in the Israel-Iran crisis, while stopping short of calling for an immediate ceasefire. Speaking at a media briefing, Ursula von der Leyen relayed details of a phone call she had with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday, stating that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. That is the Western line and the Western take on what is happening at the moment. And part of the Western lines in their negotiations with Israel, as Israel continues to ask for Western powers to position with them, and Western powers are on the line, of course, aligned with their international interests, but as well called upon by the international community that's demanding an end to Zionist aggression. Iran itself, doing its round of negotiations in terms of its nuclear deal, has repeated time and time again and denounced the biased perspective that Western powers and the international community itself, gathered as well around the IAEA, had against Iran. And Iranian authorities always stated they were willing to negotiate and reach a deal if they were taken into account, if their view and their needs were taken into account, instead of just used as a mere excuse to facilitate attacks. In this context, Israel launched the offensive on Friday morning, targeting civilian population and using Iran's nuclear capabilities as an excuse to do so. We were reporting on the impacts on the aftermath of the recent strikes of Iran's retaliatory attacks on Israeli territory, on the occupied territory. At the moment, according to different news outlets, the power plant in Haifa continues to burn following a direct hit by Iranian missile strikes. We were also looking at different images of the situations that were lived in the streets of the Zionist entity as the new round of missiles fell down, all in the framework of Iran's international and True Promise Operation 3. We continue to go over the most important information regarding what is going on at the moment. We've seen a new wave of Iran's retaliatory strikes hit different areas of the occupied territories, with the aftermath in Tel Aviv of major destruction in several buildings, fires that keep burning after direct hits, explosions have been recorded in different cities, and we continue to follow the information closely. We had said that one of the latest developments, as we continue to see footage of the latest Iranian set of strikes that targeted Tel Aviv, Haifa, was the decision of Israel to shut down parts of its largest oil refinery. This was caused by one of the direct hits of an Iranian missile on Israel's Basan refinery that made it close some of its facilities after an Iranian missile attack damaged the installations. We continue to bring the latest information as we see the Jerusalem skyline, the occupied Jerusalem skyline at dawn, as a new day is breaking in with possible new retaliatory strikes coming in the next few hours. Israel and Iran are in the midst of an ongoing exchange of fire at the moment, as Iran promised to retaliate any attack, and it has done so, not with a single attack that stopped after it began, but with a series of important attacks with massive weapons that have overcome the defense mechanisms of Israel and be able to hit different targets in the different waves of retaliatory strikes. We continue to look at the different repercussions and the aftermath of the different situations and strikes coming down occupied territory. We were mentioning at the moment images of an explosion of the defense of the missiles in the area of defense of Israel, followed by the successful entry of Iranian missiles in Haifa. We said that Haifa was among the hardest hit cities in this new wave of retaliatory strikes, hitting a power plant, major power plant in Haifa, also an oil refinery as well, and fires that are still underway at this moment as we continue to see the aftermath in Tel Aviv as well, with different buildings that have been torn down, as we can see fires that continue to be underway as well. This is the consequence, and these are the impacts of the latest set of retaliatory strikes that have hit the city.
בואנה, יש אנשים לכודים. וואו. יואו, הלך הבניין. יואו, יואו. יואו. בואנה, יש אנשים לכודים. וואו. יואו, הלך הבניין. יואו. בואנה, יש אנשים לכודים. וואו. יואו, הלך הבניין. יואו, יואו. יואו.
We're looking at images from the aftermath of the latest strikes in occupied territory, in this case in different areas of Tel Aviv where buildings were targeted. We're looking at images of a synagogue in Tel Aviv as well. Some of the areas of destruction were one of the central synagogues as well. We had different reports of power plants and oil refinery being targeted in Haifa. At this moment, we're going over the aftermath of the latest wave of Iran's retaliatory strikes that have hit different areas of the occupied territories. We recall that we are looking at the consequences of this latest stage of the Operation True Promise 3 carried out by Iran. We're looking at the images of that underground destruction provoked by the direct hits of different missiles that have overcome the defense systems, the Israeli defense systems. One of the most relevant things to keep in mind in terms of these attacks, and one of the most relevant points that experts have been following, the possibility of seeing how these defense systems could withstand the missile power of Iran. And we've seen in multiple occasions missiles overcoming the defense systems and being able to hit different targets, as we are seeing in that moment. These are images of just moments ago when the missiles were indeed coming down in Tel Aviv and would generate the destruction that we were seeing later on. This is among the most relevant attack that the occupied territory, that the cities of the state of Israel have received. Let's recall that we're talking about an air defense system that was praised worldwide as being among the highest developed, the most developed technical mechanisms in terms of defense. But according to different experts and also statements from the past days, those defense mechanisms were oversaturated by the amount of missiles brought down by Iran, missiles that in many cases were able to reach the ground, to reach their target. We are at the moment talking about different targets hit in Tel Aviv, in Haifa. We're looking through different media outlets, local media outlets. Israel's public broadcaster Kan was reporting that at least 4 areas were hit in the latest Iranian attacks on central Israel. It said also that at least 1 person was seriously wounded in central Israel. Of course, these figures are bound to increase as the numbers keep coming in. Earlier, Israel's Ynet News reported 12 people were wounded in central Israel and that all of them were moderate or mild injuries. It also reported there had been a fire in the city of Petah Tikva. And these are just some of the different reports of damage as we're looking on screen right now at one of the buildings damaged in Tel Aviv. Just some of the reports of the aftermath. We will continue, of course, to find out more as on-site reports continue to come through regarding this latest series of attacks that have been underway, and that is just the latest stage of the Operation True Promise led by Iran. We continue to go through media outlets. We had said that one of the most recent pieces of information were also the decision of Israel of closing part of one of its central oil refinery stations, parts of which were harshly hit during one of these latest missile attacks. More information on the recent attack. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps have stated that new methods were used in the attack, which caused Israeli systems to target each other. This is the declaration of the Iranian military. They had long stated that they had the technical capabilities and the technical strategies to be able to confront the Israeli defense systems. They have just carried out a new raid of strikes that have hit the ground and many targets. We're looking at the damage on scene, on screen, and while we are doing this, we received the report of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps stating that the methods used were new, and some of those key methods and the key innovations had to do with making the Israeli system target each other in their attempt to bring down the missiles. More on the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps recent statements. They have said that Operation True Promise 3 will be more effective and will continue until annihilation. We are going through This is reported by local news outlets, and we continue to follow this exchange of fire that also brings about historical cues between the major powers in the region, and also a long withstanding history of regional powers and regional nations opposing the colonizing and Zionist ambitions of the Zionist entity in the region. Let's recall that Iran has said time and time again, including on Sunday through its foreign ministry, that Iran is willing to stop attacks if Israel and when Israel decides to stop its own attacks towards Iranian territory. There's no need in that case for mediation, for a ceasefire deal. The only necessary requirement for a stop to aggressions is that the Zionist state that began the aggressions on Friday morning decide to stop those attacks. We continue to go through the most important topics regarding the aftermath of the most recent impacts that have targeted cities in the occupied territories. We are going through different videos that are showing the devastation and the destruction left behind, in this case in Tel Aviv, for example. The scenes of the destruction that was caused by an Iranian missile brought down directly over Tel Aviv in the center of occupied Palestine. We continue to monitor the local news outlets, going over the most recent information to understand what is happening in this moment. We have also local reports from Israeli journalists stating that the last strikes were very strong and quite fearful. We're talking about the latest strikes of Iran's retaliatory attacks coming down different areas of the occupied Palestinian territory. Let's recall that earlier today, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps also made and issued a statement addressing the Palestinians in the occupied territories, stating that they recommended staying away from any possible target areas, radioactive sites, nuclear facilities, and any sites that could be targeted in order to avoid damage in the present situation that they were in. On the other hand, the Al-Qassam brigades from Hamas in Gaza also sent a solidarity message showing support to the Iranian operation, also in solidarity with the mourning of the top Iranian officials that were killed by Israel, and also sent their own set of strikes along with the Iranian operation in a show of support and coordination. More on the most recent information from the site. The ambulance service of Israel has stated that 29 wounded have been evacuated following Iran's latest attacks, according to Israel's ambulance and blood bank service. This is a last-minute statement that is coming in from local sources. Magan David Adam has said that 3 of the wounded are in a moderate condition and 26 have minor injuries. She has also taken to social media X, the emergency service, to state that search and location operations are still continuing vigorously at all the scenes for casualties. Efforts are underway after the recent Iranian strikes. We are looking at the damage inflicted on different areas, including Tel Aviv. We continue to go through the recent information that comes from the site as we're following the aftermath of the recent Iranian strikes. Let's recall that Iranian outlets stated that at least 4 sites had been hit in central Israel. These are among the reports of the impacts, of the consequences of these retaliatory strikes. Let's recall this is in the framework of Operation True Promise 3, the operation launched by Iran against the state of Israel following the attacks that Israel itself launched on Iranian territory, attacks that started on early Friday morning and have continued to this moment and have caused, according to an earlier statement by Iranian authorities, at least 224 casualties, 90% of them from the civilian population. That is what started and explains this present situation, as Iran is describing these as legitimate defense and calling on Israel to stop its attacks in order for the Islamic State to stop retaliation. We are continuing to monitor the situation in the current state of events as we look at the aftermath in Tel Aviv, in this case, of the most recent strikes. Among some of the latest statements gathered by different news outlets, Israeli residents have been allowed to leave shelters after the Iranian attack has ended. This according to a press release that we have commented minutes ago on behalf of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. A little bit more on the context in which this is taking place. A recent political analysts have stated that even though the civilian population stands in Israel, stands behind the confrontation, it does not stand behind Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The legitimacy of the Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to be severely questioned, and the experts rest to see how this major impacts on the civilian population, impacts that Israel has not seen before how this will impact on the conscience and on the perception of the conflicts that the Israeli civilian population has. Let's recall that after months and months of ongoing genocide in Gaza that escalated on October of 2023, the civilian population in this area of the occupied territories have not undergone anything similar to this repercussions, anything similar to these consequences that the Iranian missile capabilities are now putting them through. We will continue to closely monitor this situation. We are looking at the aftermath of the latest and most recent attacks from Iran on Israeli territory. Of course, Israeli sources are stating that the wave of strikes has passed now, but we're left with the aftermath, the severe impacts that the Iranian missiles have caused in different areas, including Tel Aviv, including Haifa. Also, explosions recorded in occupied Jerusalem. And we will rest to see how this will unfold, what impacts this will have in the coming day. There are no signs of reapproachment so far. There are no signs of de-escalation. Even Western powers are calling on Israel to de-escalate, are calling on a deal to be made. Iran has stated that it is not willing to sit down. It will only respond to a stop in the aggressions, in the Zionist aggressions. They understand that early on Friday, Israel launched an unprompted aggression on its national territory, breaking all international legitimacy, and in this context, their legitimate defense is what Operation True Promise 3 is. In terms of what Iranian authorities have been mentioning, it is up to Israel to decide if they are willing to stop their Zionist aggressions. We are closely following an escalation of violence that has, of course, repercussions in the civilian population of these nations, but also repercussions worldwide, not only in terms of the aggravating situation of escalating violence in different conflicts, but also we will rest to see the long-term repercussions in global markets, in different global alliances, and how this escalating conflict in the Middle East continues to unfold. Those were live images from Tel Aviv as we were monitoring the different skylines after a new attack, new retaliatory attacks from Iran in this ongoing Operation True Promise 3. We will continue to monitor, as we have been doing, from teleSUR English.